Welcome everybody to the latest VOLTTRON office hours. Today's session is mostly open topic, but just wanted to give a quick update on the development efforts going on. Shweta, did you want to talk about the upcoming code drop?
Yeah, sure. So we are in the process of getting all the agents out for the latest code drop, which will be code drop 3. The agents that are going are part of this is the Modbus driver, Modbus TK driver, DMP3 driver, DMP3 outstation agent, actuator agent, and all the documentation updates that we are doing for the modular version of VOLTTRON. Apart from that, we were also working on creating an automated release process of releasing these individual agents from their repositories. So most of the agents have been released. There's Postgres historian. Sorry, I didn't add Postgres historian to my list earlier. Postgres historian is also part of this code drop. That's the last one in our list that is yet to be released. We are in the process of doing that. The documentation will be hosted in Eclipse VOLTTRON. Read the docs. And we are in the process of building that. It will take probably a couple of days for the build to be completed, and you should have the documentation up by Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, sure, Greg. Get the list out. Do you want to talk about the automation, automated release process in the meantime?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
What I guess I will just go through one of the GitHub actions that Chandrika and I have been working on. Allows us to reuse a large amount of code in a single place. And I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and we'll see what I can. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So let me share my browser.
Yes,
hopefully you can see. Yeah. Okay. So what we have is we have this reusable workflow that actually is available to anybody can use this. So I'm using it here. I'm also using it on a secondary project that I think will have the exact same thing. But basically the way this works is we have a small release YAML file, and yeah, GitHub Actions is all based upon YAML. And let me open the small version of VOLTTRON cores. And it's basically like calling a function. So when we want to release the VOLTTRON core, we can come in here to actions, and we click on the action that we want, which in this case it's called make full release. And then we get a prompt for different versions. Like maybe we're going to run this off of develop because that's where it is. We can enter a merge strategy. So if we know there's going to be a conflict, or if we run this and then figure out there's a conflict, then we can deal with it here, and we can add a version number or we can use the latest version that is tagged in the repository itself, and bump one of the different bump versions that you can do with poetry. And we run the workflow, and then we get the output. This one passed. We had some fails because we had, and this is all of the things that it does. So it does our entire workload, installs on Python 3.10, installs everything, installs the dependencies in the library. We bump the release number, or if we gave it a release number in this version. So we went from 10.10 to 10.04. And this isn't exactly right, because 10.1 is just what's in the PyProject file, but our latest was 10.03 in the versions that are tagged in our repositories. So we kind of ignore the version number that's in the pyproject.toml file in favor of using the tagged versions in the repository. And then, so it goes and it creates a new release branch, merges back to main, runs the tests that we have on main, so that we know that we didn't, when the merge happened, it didn't screw anything up. Create the build, publish up to PyPy, and that is what it does. And the way that this works is we have a job called deploy release, and in our make release right here, we call uses, and we use the main branch because that's the one that we want to use. And this, we pass the things that we've entered here, merge strategy, release version, and bump version. We pass those all to the deploy script, and then we have some secrets behind the scenes that allow us to have enough access to do all of these things. Currently, the auto project PAT uses a GitHub classic token that has the workflows available, and that's what we do. And then, so each of the repositories has basically an identical version of this in the repository, and we can release any of them, and be confident that the tests are passing, because it requires the test pass on the branch. And that's the whole run through of the way it works. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Greg. Coming back to the list of agents that will be part of this code drop, I've just pasted the link in the chat. I can also share my screen and go over that real quick. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the list that I went over briefly. There's Modbus, there's DMP3 driver and outstation, Modbus TK and Modbus driver, and actuator, and Postgres historian. These are our agents or drivers, code related update. And then the automation of Git release process that Craig went over just now. And the last effort that we are focusing on was documentation for modular. We've just kicked off the build, and it will take a couple of days for it to complete. So hopefully by end of Monday, the documentation will be up. And I will share another email about the details of that. That's about it. Any questions on the code drop?
I have one small question. I noticed that when you guys were sharing the screen, there was one file called code analysis, and then in it, I just took a look. It uses code QL. Are you finding that is catching anything, or is it worth having, or what are your experiences with that?
The code QL has caught some things, but not very many. But that's what we've run for forever. So, you know,
It didn't hurt bringing it along.
yeah, I mean, it's a Microsoft thing. It's like, yeah, static code analysis kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think that the other one that we probably should put in here is Codicy, which is it actually looks at the Python code and does a better job, I think. And I've put that in on some things, but then you have to tune it so that you have not as many false positives as you would like, you know, because there's definitely ways to improve your code that are different than what the static code analysis tools would like. Yeah.
Thanks.
So anyways, if you guys want, you can definitely use this workflow in your release processes, assuming you follow the same guidelines that we have and want to take advantage of it or want to learn from this, most definitely do that.
Great. Thanks. Any other questions or comments on this? Oh, James?
I have a question on, it's not related to this, but on something else, if I could. I was curious if anybody has used the BACnet load control object, and if so, what's your experience been with it? It seems like it might be a very good way to couple a utility demand response to a building network. And the problem is I don't know what's on the back end. I mean, basically it's open as to whether or not the device gets controlled by the load control object. And I would imagine most devices aren't, but I don't know. So I was curious if anybody would like to, you know, if you have any experience with it.
Dave, Robert, or is that something you guys have done anything with?
No, I know that Dave's been exploring some different object types within BACnet. We recently did a little exploration with the BACnet schedule objects. I actually have never used or was not familiar with this load control object. I'm just looking at it now. But certainly if in the driver working group, if there's interest in exposing different types of objects to interact with, get that, you know, over to Dave, because he's going to be working on the driver soon. So
yeah, I'm not particularly familiar with that object either, but
Okay. Anybody else have any experience with it? Maurice or Judy?
I don't have any experience with it, but I'm about to do something like that, I think.
Oh.
So in South Africa, they have like really intermittent power, and we're Potentially, we're just in that kind of the bidding process and that sort of thing. So it may happen, may not. I don't know.
Mhm.
So we install these in hockey rinks, and because of the power being intermittent, they sometimes use a generator which costs 5 times as much per amount of energy, right? As opposed to the grid stuff.
Right.
So we're gonna have to figure out a way to kind of handle those controls.
Yeah, reduce the load when the generator goes on.
Yeah, basically, like, so
Yeah.
what we would do is drive the set point of the ice as cold as possible when we have the available power. And then once it gets up to a certain level, then we have to use it regardless whether we want to or not, right? But
Right.
so
Yeah.
I don't know if that's along the same lines as what you're thinking.
Yeah, it looks okay, but the thing is, I think it would have to back end into the actual control protocol, because I don't think a whole lot of devices actually would use it. So you'd have to use something like Modbus or something like that to actually control the devices. Or a smart breaker would be the other thing. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks. That sounds like an interesting application, though. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So another thing so I was talking with Andrew yesterday about Modbus and the harmonization between the Modbus TK and Modbus driver. And so Dave, as part of the whole refresh on the drivers, it would be nice to have one or the other. And he was asking if we remember where specifically one worked over the other, and he would be able to if he had access to something that had the edge case, he would be able to take a look and potentially migrate one way or the other with community support. So since he's not here, I'm obviously not signing him up for it, but that's the gist.
Yeah, no, I mean, coming up with one Modbus, to rule them all, I guess, is definitely part of the plan for the refactor. I have personally, in using both of them, had issues with each of them in different corner cases.
Yeah, do we have access to places where there's corner cases?
That is a better question.
We do, but we don't have externally accessible components that
And that's
Andrew can
fine,
poke at.
just as long as it doesn't matter if it's externally facing, just as long as like you and him or you and whoever set up a time and you guys can work on it and say this is what is happening and through that debug, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, if someone's willing to work with on that, that's great.
I posted a link to the old issue where Andrew brought this up. Yeah, because Modbus TK was it that it was easier to set up, and I can't remember what it did better than Pi Modbus, but go ahead.
There are a few things it does better. It for one, it handles Modbus RTU in addition to Modbus TCP. Its configuration makes a little bit more sense, though it's also a little more complex.
Which one supports the Modbus RTU?
Modbus TK.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you have a serial device and you have, the physical ability to talk to it from something running VOLTTRON, Modbus TK will work.
I've used the
Um,
regular Modbus driver to talk to Modbus RTU devices though.
You have?
Yeah. It just doesn't like it when you
Do
have.
you
it
have a
didn't-
Modbus gateway in between then? That's
I do have a
translating TCP to RTU. I mean, this will directly speak
Yeah.
Modbus RTU.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, in most cases, you're going to have a gateway device there, where you're still a TCP client, and it's acting as a server, and then on the other end of the server, it's a Modbus master along the serial.
Well, regardless though, you have to have something that knows how to route it.
If you so. I don't know how many people would be using Modbus RTU directly, right? Because
Well,
you
but I
need
mean,
to be sending serial commands.
Yeah, but you have to have
directly.
something
So
to
I mean,
route it. You can't just send
yeah.
it directly. I mean, you have to have something that routes it because Modbus RTU is a serial. So if it's like a standalone serial line, there's no IP connection.
If you were doing this on a Raspberry Pi, you would have to have a little hat there with the screw terminal.
Got you. Okay, so that's the really edge case.
Right.
Got you.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
It's nice to have. It's more general, and there's definitely a potential use case for that. I don't know if anyone is actually using it, although I think the folks who wrote it, was it who did that? Was it Consensum?
Yeah, Consensum wrote.
It was a third party, I know. Yeah, I think they were doing that, and that's why they implemented a new Modbus drivers. They had that use case. Their configuration system is kind of nice. It also has transforms. So in other words, it'll apply scale factors and so forth at the driver before it hits the message bus, and then convert back in the other direction so that you can speak the real value and it will speak the integer, which happens to be the value multiplied by 200 and shifted 3 places or whatever. But the issue that the Modbus TK had is that it had problems if you have multiple if you have multiple devices behind one of those gateways. So you're speaking to a device over TCP. You've got its IP address. You're talking to it, but behind it there are 2 different serials that you're talking to. It would try to create a new object to represent that each time that would cancel out the old one. So one device would be clobbering the other. And there's an open ticket on Modbus TK that one of us who previously did the driver framework, I forget who, actually opened a couple of years ago on that they haven't touched. So I don't know exactly how complicated it would be to go and fix that for them, because I have not actually looked into it yet. But that was the only thing with Modbus TK, I think, that was problematic. Pi Modbus, the other thing that I've had an issue with in the past, I've actually been able to catch it dropping packets which were physically received. It's like I can see them coming in Wireshark, but it nonetheless times out as if it never came in. And I haven't seen that with Modbus TK, but I have seen it with the Pi Modbus driver. Now, granted, I was going really fast. I think I was pulling something once every half second or something like that. So that's the summary of what I know of the 2 different ones.
Hey, Dave, this is Greg.
Yeah.
Excellent discussion. We're having our driver meeting on the 22nd. Is that right?
It would be a Monday, not this Monday, but the Monday after. Is that the 22nd?
And
where's the calendar?
And if there's any
22nd.
If you've got any thoughts or paperwork or just things you want to kind of get people thinking on, I'd really like to get that before the 22nd if possible for review. And discussions like
sure.
and discussions we're having right now, between Pi Modbus versus Modbus TK, I really like knowing those things, you know, to kind of think about them before we get into the meeting date, whatever. So these are, I find these very valuable.
Okay, yeah,
if you-
I've been working on putting together a preliminary design for the overall platform driver refactor that's not necessarily specific drivers like Modbus or BACnet that also need some rework. And I was hoping to be able to share kind of a planning document for that in advance of the meeting. I just didn't have that ready for the last
okay.
one. So
Well, I want you to have a most informed audience when you get around to having your meeting. So I'm making
sure,
myself available for that. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Great. Yeah, that should be a good good working group discussion. Any
yeah, I'm
more?
gonna try to wrap up that planning document, early next week, and let people take a look at it internally and then send it out for everybody else to review.
Great. See, Joe, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. Unrelated to those things, just the normal office hour stuff, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we're yeah, go for it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I have a few questions. So at any point, tell me to stop and I can take it offline or something like that with y'all. But essentially, I've been out of the loop a bit on VOLTTRON stuff for probably the last 8 months or so, and I finally have a reason coming up to jump back into it. So I'm hoping that y'all can help me out here with some early decisions on how to approach this. So the use case, I think it's fairly simple in the grand scheme of things that people use VOLTTRON for, but yeah, I'm in the energy storage research program at EPRI, and we're going to be doing some emerging technology testing and demonstration stuff, and we want to use VOLTTRON for, we'll write our own control, fairly simple control agents to run within VOLTTRON. We have experience with that, that's fine. And we'll probably be using like the Modbus TK agent for that control. And then we also want to use VOLTTRON for data collection, which this is a fairly new use case for me at least. So I'm looking for some wisdom on this. And I guess for a little more detail on what we're hoping to do here is our company has an enterprise-wide data science platform where we're hoping to essentially, I don't know if stream is technically the right word, but we're hoping to send MQTT messages to an MQTT broker that's within that data science platform. So I've been poking around a bit, and it looks like there is an MQTT historian that we would, I guess, use for that. So my first question is really about, I'm looking right now at, there's VOLTTRON 8.2, which I guess is sort of the monolithic version that we talk about. There's now VOLTTRON 10, which is, I guess, the more modular approach. And there's also Docker, VOLTTRON Docker that I've noticed. So I'm wondering if people have any thoughts about my use case and which one I should be using for it. I'm happy to answer any questions about the use case as well, if it's more helpful.
Shweta, do you want to take that one? Shweta, you still there?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Could you repeat that, Joe? I got distracted.
Yeah, I'm basically, so I have an upcoming use case for VOLTTRON where I think the two main agents that I want to use are going to be the Modbus driver and the MQTT historian. And my first question is around whether I should use VOLTTRON 8.2, VOLTTRON 10, or VOLTTRON Docker. I think all of them have, 8.2 seems like it already has everything in it. It has the MQTT historian there. I don't know if I've noticed that in VOLTTRON 10, so that may be an issue with using 10. I'm not sure if you're aware, if that's, I might be missing something on that.
The
But VOLTTRON,
MQTT historian is not in 10 yet. That is
Yeah,
that is for sure. Yep.
okay, and is that, oh, sorry, I was just gonna ask about the MQTT historian again real quick. So that would be the prerequisite, or that agent would be needed to send MQTT messages to a Mosquito broker, right?
yeah,
Okay,
that's correct. So we have that historian which will send data from VOLTTRON message bus to a broker, MQTT broker. And from there you can, whichever application is subscribing for that topic will receive it. We don't have an agent that can pull down data from the broker. This historian can push it to the broker, not the other way.
okay. So it sounds like then right now, if I wanted to start working on this, I would need to use 8.2, right?
Yes, please start with VOLTTRON 8.2.
Okay,
VOLTTRON 10 is a modular version of VOLTTRON and it's still under development. And we are just pushing agents one by one. We haven't pushed MQTT historian.
okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'm interested in using 10, but yeah, I would much rather have the stuff there that's ready to go. So I'll definitely do that. What about the Docker version of, I think that's of 8.2, right? I've seen that on the
Yeah.
original VOLTTRON repo. What are what's y'all's experience with that? It's enticing to me, I guess, but I don't know. It seems maybe it's less mature. I don't know if y'all see any pitfalls, I guess, in what I'm describing, or if it just seems like, yeah, it'll work fine.
There's actually a Docker container there's examples for both the 8.2 as well as the 10. Obviously 10 is not going to have the capability of what you need, but the Docker 8.2 should have everything you need in it. So it really just depends upon if you can stomach some of the startup delays that the VOLTTRON Docker does. It takes a little bit to start up, and it installs things a couple times, just based upon the way the VOLTTRON platform itself works. We had to do a fair amount of hoops in order to get the Docker to work properly.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean,
it literally just depends upon what your experience is and whether you because both are documented. So it's just a matter of what you want to do. Are you going to run on bare metal? Or are you going to use a virtualization system? It totally depends upon what your and your company's capabilities are, as to which way you want to go.
yeah, I mean,
There's also an Ansible deployment for 8.2. So you can use Ansible to run your hosts. So
okay. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know exactly what using Docker here how it would benefit me, because I'm not that experienced with Docker yet. I'm mostly interested in the Docker thing because of Docker being attached to it right now.
yeah, just because of the name, right? The brand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm fairly new to it. So it sounds like it's probably worth just sticking with the normal 8.2 for now. I mean, we're just doing this kind of one-off on Raspberry Pis for our control.
Yeah, if it is like that, then better to start with bare metal and go from there.
Okay.
So do you
Thanks.
need are you just pushing to MQTT, or do you need the MQTT data to appear on VOLTTRON?
So that's a good question. So initially, definitely just pushing to MQTT just to get the data into our enterprise SQL database in the data science platform.
Okay.
Maybe eventually we would need to pull, but that's definitely the use case for now. It's just getting data from the Raspberry Pi to
Okay.
data science platform.
because we've got examples, you know, we've had people write drivers to pull data from MQTT sources and that sort of thing. So it's definitely something that can happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. One question I have about the MQTT here, and I think this is more a question about the mechanics of MQTT or you know, MQ itself here. But so you know, this is new to us, the whole MQTT approach for getting data. What we typically have done is we put a device in the field that aggregates like 15 minutes worth of Modbus polling data locally into CSV files and then does an upload of that CSV file to the data science platform. So the nice thing about that is that little device has like a 2 GB thumb drive on it for backing up data if like the cellular network is down, for example, right? What about using the MQTT historian? I understand that MQTT has this kind of quality of service thing built into it, right? Where it can handle like caching data if it's not able to get the data through to the broker. Is that a functionality that exists here as well?
All of our historians get data gets cached before it's sent across the wire. It's up to the historian to tell the cache when to clear. So as long as the sending is reporting correctly, then it would still be cached. And we cache into a SQLite data store before sending across a wire.
Okay, so there is functionality there where the Raspberry Pi will basically hold the data until it
Yep.
gets like receipt, that it gets acknowledgement that it was received by
Yep.
the broker. Okay, that's great.
So I don't know if it's acknowledged by the broker, or I haven't looked into it in a long time. I don't know whether I'd have to look at the code to make sure that it does. So it may just send it and then report that it. I'm not sure if it actually uses the MQTT thing as
No.
its.
I don't think there's a handshake involved. It just sends that
Yeah.
and is done with it. There's no acknowledgement.
Right.
Yeah. So if it errors because it can't connect or something like that, then it'll keep it in the
Right.
cache. Yeah.
But that is something that could be maybe an enhancement that would be worthy to have if.
Okay, so for example, sorry to belabor this, but if the thing is sitting there doing 1 minute Modbus reads, and as soon as the MQTT historian sees those Modbus reads, it sends an MQTT message to the broker saying, here's the next message at the next minute. It's doing that just fine. The cell network goes down for 15 minutes. When the cell network comes back up,
You're going to get a
what you're
burst of
saying-
messages.
Okay, yeah. So we would get all of that in one
Yeah.
go. We would not necessarily miss it. Like maybe if it was
Yeah.
a huge outage, something, we might lose some data, but that's unexpected.
Well, and that's a good point. The cache.
I don't know if there is a reconnection in there. I'm looking at it. Hold on. Yeah,
I
Jeremy,
think
go
the
ahead.
base historian does the reconnection. So it should reconnect. Because that's what we see on all of our historians is that we reconnect.
Okay. I'll test it out too. I mean, we have time to test it, so I'll try.
Yeah, let
unplugging
us
it
know.
see if we get it.
And if you have an issue with it and then make an issue, create a pull request, whatever, just make
Yeah,
sure
that's
you're
great.
part of the Eclipse user community.
Yeah, I think I am. Thanks for that.
Great.
I have one other question. Sorry. This is coming from our InfoSec team asking me questions about this new tool that I would like to just start using. But at least new tool to them. So I think it's kind of maybe a goofy question, but I think it's one of the things they might ask. So Options for encryption of the data at rest. How does data, when data is moving through the 0MQ bus between agents, is it encrypted? So that's one question, I guess.
If your connection is TLS, then it should be.
Well, so the connections, this is internally within Voltron, like just
Oh,
between
yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah, they are. It's using curve.
Yeah,
Curve
it's
key.
using cryptographic key, so it's encrypted.
okay, so like going from the platform driver to the MQTT historian, that information is encrypted.
Yep.
The
Uh,
SQLite cache is not encrypted.
Okay, yeah, so that was another
yeah,
question,
that's
is
true.
on the disk. On the
On the
disk,
disk, it
data
is not.
encrypted?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah, from the historian to the broker, that's also encrypted because you use TLS certificates.
yeah,
SSL.
yeah. Yeah, I think so. That's something that we'll have to set up on our end, which is, that's no problem. Like we'll definitely get the encryption going between the broker and the Voltron instance. Yeah, I think they just have questions like this about like the data on disk. Is it encrypted? I guess it's not. Hopefully that makes a huge deal, but okay, that's good. And I also have a question here. It says InfoSec questions around passwords and certificates. I don't know if does that make any sense to y'all? Is that like how they're stored within Voltron or something, I guess? Is that, I mean, I think it's just like the same, like normal Linux stuff, right? Like how you would handle these things in a Linux environment.
So we go with the assumption that if you have access to the box where the data is collected by Voltron, then you're pretty much done there, right? In terms of data and certificates. All the certificates are stored in Voltron Home, and they're not
Yeah,
Okay.
they're under a specific user, and it's set up to be readable by only that user. But if somebody hacks into your device, it's pretty much game over, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, yeah, I think that's all I have. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate that, and looking forward to getting back into this stuff.
Great.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, Stephen, so you've got your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I've been away for much longer than Joe, so I'm still trying to get back into it. And I've got some, I think, probably even more. Well, not even more because this question's more basic, but I've got some, I think, fairly basic questions. So first, you were talking about Voltron 10 earlier. Where is that? Because I look at the main thing and I only see tags for 8, and I didn't even know it existed until you mentioned 10 in the call.
So it's all under the Eclipse-Voltron organization. So github.com/Eclipse Voltron is, so we are literally under Eclipse. Yeah, and Shweta just posted it. I was about ready to do that. She posted it. So that's where all of our repositories are for 10. If you can directly do a pip install Voltron from your 3.10 Python version, and it will bring down Voltron so you can play with it. Or you can install any of the different packages that are put out. Everything's up on Pippy. So when Shweta went through the releases earlier, each one of those releases is available out on Pippy, or will be shortly. We're finishing up some of the testing on some of our things, but yeah.
Okay, great. Because I was just, what I do, I just Google, GitHub Voltron, and it just brings me to the GitHub/Voltron thing, which only has 8 there. So, okay, great. Thank you.
Eventually, we will probably have, and this is probably 3 years down the road because that's how long it takes. But eventually, we will archive the Voltron repository and let it be there for posterity, and provide a link to the Eclipse VOLTTRON.
So if I've got a new project I'm starting now and I started using 8, how hard is, do you have any sense of how hard it would be to migrate the things to 10 later?
There is actually under VOLTTRON, there's a VOLTTRON-developer repository that can answer that question for you.
Oh, wonderful.
That's I'm not necessarily saying that it's 100% up to date, but it definitely will give you a sense of how changing agents will be. The structure of VOLTTRON Home is going to be totally different. But so you're going to start, they aren't backward compatible in that sense, but the agents that you write we've written the agents in such a way that the namespacing may change, but the core functionality has been pretty much the same.
And the config files are pretty
Yeah, and
similar.
the configuration files are the same for drivers and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. I'll look into that. And thanks for also the GitHub Action stuff. I'm probably going to make use of that for other unrelated projects because I've done some stuff with it, but not nearly as much as you've got set up there. So the idea of being able to like configure stuff so you can, I didn't know that you could do things where, through the GitHub UI, you could set parameters inside the actions, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna definitely be borrowing that. Thanks.
That was totally why I showed it, right? So that you could actually see what magic there is out there. Because yeah, it's pretty cool what they allow you to do out there for free.
Okay, a second, hopefully quick question here. At the last meeting, someone showed off a system with a nice little UI thing that showed kind of a diagram of the components and what they had. And is there any sort of UI components that you recommend for integrating with this, or anything you get for free from VOLTTRON from a UI perspective?
So there's VOLTTRON Central that comes with the 8.2 version of it, and that gives you graphing capabilities, etc. There's a web API that is exposed by 8.2 as well as 10. If you install the VOLTTRON libweb package, then you can have access to a JSON API, and it's our RESTful API. There is not a UI currently that I'm aware of available out in the wild for just general VOLTTRON stuff. The UI that I think you're talking about was the 2035 UI that I was using to demonstrate the 2035 stuff. And then there's also the diagramming tool, which was actually using Mermaid on a mod, not Modbus, but on a markdown file. So
we are also in the process of developing a very minimal UI that will allow a new user to get the platform up and ready and install agents on the fly and monitor train data. It's still a work in progress. We have an intern working on it. We might have it ready end of the year or so.
So I didn't get the name you said before about the, I don't remember exactly what it was last week, but there was like, heat exchangers and like a HVAC system with like an outside and inside and various components in the middle. What did you say?
that was NRA,
Okay.
or was it NRA? It was with the
I think it was Robert's Robert was showing something about the heat agent. What was that, Robert?
Oh, I don't recollect.
No, the heat, is it heat optimization or,
Oh, the heat, the fault detection for heat recovery systems.
yeah,
Heat-
that one.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's
What,
the
what about it?
What did you use for the UI portion of it?
Oh, so there's no UI portion for that, for that aspect. We used Grafana to show some of those plots. We do have for our other apps, we have a results UI and then a configuration UI. And I believe those guys were built in React or some JavaScript type library. They're
Yeah,
web-based.
They're web-based based on Node.js with
Yeah,
React
Node.js,
as
something
the-
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
For in general, though, I think that if you want to look at data and stuff, Grafana is a really good solution. So that's something
If you
that
need, if you have something that's general, yeah.
yeah, it works pretty well. We've been able to, with a little know-how and some Google research, we've been able to create some pretty good, you know, visualizations for data analytics with Grafana.
Okay. Thank you. And if I can, just one more quick one. Do you have like a list of example systems, either simple or otherwise, that I or others could consult and try and borrow from? I mean, I've been reading through the documentation and it's very complete, but it's also kind of complex. So sometimes I do work better with, oh, here's simple or even real world example system. I don't know if you've got like a collection of here's people using VOLTTRON and open source repositories that's
Oh,
available.
so like an open source, someone's open source solution based on VOLTTRON, not necessarily the core platform itself. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Would the PNNL applications be what he's looking for?
I'm
Harsh.
not sure.
I think partially, but I think what he's really looking for is like a solution where someone's actually this is their deployed system that they're using to collect data and push to their cloud instance and all that sort of thing. I don't think anybody's complete solution is posted open source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Figured I'd ask, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That doesn't mean that they aren't. It's just that we're not aware of it.
Yeah, so and the VOLTTRON PNNL applications repository might be a good place for you to explore a little bit. It's it has some energy efficiency and grid service type applications that we've developed and tested. So
Fantastic. I'll definitely look into that. Thank you very much.
yeah, no problem.
All right. Great, thanks. Yeah, a lot of great conversation here. Got about five.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask one more question here about 8.2 versus 10. So I know that I should already know this, I'm sorry. But can you help me in my head just to understand the benefits of, in the future at least, once version 10 has the things that I need within it, for example, what are the benefits of 10 over 8.2? A couple things that I guess I know about is like, it's pretty cool that you can set it up and run it just through a pip install. It's like one thing, right? And another would be that like, it's, I guess, lighter weight in terms of not having to have everything from the monolithic package in what you're running. Are there other things that I'm missing? Or am I wrong about those things?
No, you're right so far. There's one of the differences between the two is that the 10 is based upon poetry, which is a which manages versions much better than pip by itself. So it really, you can hone in on the specific versions that you want to use and utilize. And you can also, with that, during development, if you actually did download the code, you can reference your local project files very easily in Poetry. And I guess you could do that in pip by installing with the -e. But so yeah, the main thing is that you only have to install the things that you care about. That's the biggest thing.
And then
Yeah.
also, or sorry, and then also, if you want to change, modify a part of VOLTTRON and leave the rest alone, then that allows you to do that too. So like if, you know, you wanted to write your own auth service, or you wanted to make some change to the historian framework or something like that, then, you know, that's the only part that you would have to touch. And, you know, the rest of the functionality, you would just use those other, you know, the existing libraries.
And
Well, so
finally,
I was gonna say on that point real quick. How does it work now that would be different? I guess you have to, if you wanted to make edits like that, you'd have to jump around all sorts of different files and make those edits. Is that?
yeah, that and everything is, so if you look at the code in the VOLTTRON core, there's if conditions based upon whether you're in Rabbit or whether you're in ZMQ or in doing the correct thing based upon that. With VOLTTRON 10, the hope, and we're not quite there yet, but the hope with the message bus refactor is you install the message bus that you want to have in there, and then there's a library that you install that VOLTTRON interacts with that specific library using a specific interface, and you can basically swap your message bus out, right? So instead of using ZMQ, you can use RabbitMQ by installing a different library.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate all that background. That's really helpful. So when I think of the install process for 8.2, I'm just pulling from my memory here. Like I remember there being sort of a list of maybe 10 steps total. It's not a huge deal to run through, but you know, things like there's like a bootstrap file and stuff like that. You don't have to do any of that with VOLTTRON 10, right?
That is the hope, yes. Unless you're
Okay.
going to be actively developing it, that is the hope, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And how long will 8.2 be, I guess, like maintained and secure? That's one of the things that InfoSec people will probably ask, like, are they going to keep making?
Well, there's a 9 release that's going to be coming out that will have some added agents, the 2030.5 agent, TMP, and a refresh of TMP3, which I think is already out there. And so that is going to be the last official monolithic release.
But
Correct,
still
Shatha?
yeah, you're right, but it's still the production
Yeah, it is still production.
repository for now, because modular, we're still porting all the agents to the modular framework. So I would say at least for the next couple of years, it will be around and we'll be maintaining it, just because it will take time for modular to be stable.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that. Sorry for making you repeat yourselves. I know y'all have been saying these things over the past few months and I've just missed them. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
No, this was a good question answer session. I like the questions and whatnot. That's good.
All right. Well, with that, we're at time. So yeah, thanks everybody. That was great. And looking forward to the next one.
Okay, thanks all. Bye.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks.